Good afternoon. Joining me chit-chatting with Jocelyn, and this is the second half of my show. And again, I have Karen Testerman here with me, my lovely co-host and also candidate for governor, especially if you follow the resolve. And I'll just leave it at that. Do your research. This half of the show is about do your research. We're going to throw out a fishing line, and we're not going to reel you all the way back in, but we're going to give it just a little tug and make you go out and find out, what are they talking about?
Right.
What is going on? Gee, I kind of heard that, or gee, I saw that, or I think you're right. We all need to stop bashing each other and others, saying you're a conspiracy theorist, because that's just like saying somebody's racist or a bigot or a deplorable or a this. It's all name calling, when in fact, how come it is that people will so readily accept what the TV and the social media tell you without even blinking? But if I say something, something, something about taxes, or you say something, something, something about legislation, well, what do you know?
Right.
Well, where were you questioning what the TV told you, which was a complete lie? Like, let's do some of those little theories. How about when 46 was doing that speech and those two Marines came out? Marines.
Right.
Not in the correct uniform, not with the correct belts.
Well, you know, one of the things that we've forgotten to do, and perhaps it's just the belly of the beast at this point, but one of the things that we don't do anymore is we're not questioning.
Correct. We're
not looking at something and saying, is that really the right thing? When somebody tells you something, it used to be at the dinner table, if you came in and you had an opinion, Dad would say to you, where do you get your information? What's your source? Where are you? So we have a lot of sources, but we can't be doing the research for everybody out there.
Correct.
You have a person. The freedom is all about personal responsibility
and duty.
Individual responsibility. And so we can throw out these little
morsels,
bits, these morsels, these, the bait, so to speak, but it's you that has to go out and do the investigation and make your own mind up. Don't let us tell you what to do, because it is individual responsibility.
Yeah. And what you're looking at is the various TV stations owned by, it used to be tens of thousands of people. It's now, I believe it's five or six that own all the stations and all the newspapers in the world. And you never question that. They tell you, well, the sky is blue today and tomorrow it's going to be green. Everybody goes, okay. But we say, there's a storm coming in and the sky is going to start off purple and then turn pink. You're liars. You know what you're talking about. Follow the science. You never question anybody else. But there's certain people that you question and you dig at. And that's really sad that there's not equal questioning going on.
There's that thing called Mockingbird. And it's really fascinating when somebody actually, look it up on YouTube, look up Mockingbird and have them start with a phrase and then start with a phrase, and then the same phrase gets repeated over and over and over and over.
Go on TikTok. I know it's owned by the Chinese, but there is some really good stuff in there. You need to pass by the junk. But there are some really good clips in there where they show you every single TV station saying the exact same word, and even worse, the exact same phrase over and over and over again. Look at the vice president. She repeats a phrase or a word 6 to 8 times to the point where it's lunacy.
Right.
Say that word one more time. Did your mother ever say that one more time? Say that one more time and you're going to your room. I want to say the same thing to her. Say that one more time and you're going to your room. I don't want to hear it again.
So what's going on in New Hampshire? So we were talking about the machines earlier.
Correct.
And we have a friend who has filed a OSHA complaint.
An OSHA complaint, yes. I'll keep, and it's short and sweet. Why. He was on our show. He's going to be coming back. So he is an expert. He does testimony in Washington, D.C. He does various papers and investigations for several lawyers in the state of New Hampshire, and he does a pro bono case per year. And he chose one with Daniel Richard, our good friend. And he discovered, in going through all the paperwork from the Secretary of State, the AG, and all the various towns, that the AccuVote Diebold machines, on April 9th of 2010, the Secretary of State sent out a letter, email, whatever it is, instructing the towns to cut some wires, cut some ribbons, and remove the modem, because we didn't want it online. They all complied. It was all done. But you know when you take the front off the toaster and you mess with it and you jiggle with it, your warranty is null and void?
Yes.
It's the same thing with a voting machine appliance. There's nothing political about it. It's a voting machine appliance, and that terminology was put in place in July of this year. So you mess with those wires, you take that top off, it has to be safety certified. When you cut those wires, are they grounded? Is that gonna electrocute somebody? Is that gonna zap somebody? Are these all up to United States electrical code? And that's just one instance that he found. Every other time that they open it up, they do something on the motherboard. They replace a clock chip, they replace this, they replace that. They have never been safety certified.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's the complaint. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
You know.
So, and then speaking of testifying in front of Congress, our friend Mike Gill,
yes,
has been testifying in front of the Ways and Means Committee.
Correct.
And one of the things he brought up was the Pandora Papers. Have you heard of the Pandora Papers?
I had briefly heard of them, and he explained them to me on one of the shows. It's to the tune of $932 billion. That's with a B.
Well, so
dollars in LLCs, trusts,
family,
PMA,
yeah,
not PMAs, but the various corporations, etc.
Right. And so these, it was the International Consortium of independent journalists,
right?
Internationally,
correct,
who have been asking for a Freedom of Information Act, looking into the trusts and the money going back and forth and the influence that they're having in various places. So the interesting thing that came out, they had almost 12 million pieces of documents that they're investigating and looking at and so forth. But the interesting thing is that not all the states have the ability to have these protected trusts. But at some point, New Hampshire filed and made themselves available for this. So you have South Dakota that has $300 billion tied up in these trusts. Similar. Or
partnerships
the partnerships or whatever is a way to, quote, maybe launder money.
Correct.
Or maybe hide the use of money some way. And they're under an investigation.
Oh, yes. They are being investigated, probed, stared at by every alphabet agency known around.
But New Hampshire
has zero.
$932 billion involved in this. And you don't think that maybe we might have a deep state cabal? Just saying that maybe we ought to ask questions about why this huge amount of money in this teeny tiny state
is not being investigated when you look at South Dakota. It's also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that $932 billion is over the National Department of Defense budget, higher.
Yes, it is bigger.
Okay, I was right.
Yeah.
Doesn't that just set off
it should set off some red flags for us so that somebody's going out and investigating. And speaking of somebody going out and investigating, Sovereign Violet,
yes, wonderful
has
girl,
put together a website. It's called grazingthesurface.com. .com. And in it, she starts with Agenda 20. I think she probably started with Agenda 21. Maybe it was after that. But Agenda 2030 is addressed in there. And what is Agenda 2030? It is a way to centralize a lot of activity of government over control, making you more of a slave than an independent thinker.
Correct.
And
you will own nothing and you will like it.
Yes, you will be happy. You will be happy. So she has put this together, and it is very, very interesting. You need to go look at it and see the ties between Dean Kamen and the University of New Hampshire and the Chinese and
the Confucius Institute.
Right, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Fauci and Army, which is Dean Kamen, and all of these other ties.
But we have Dr. Birx and her brother, who is
Plymouth State.
He's involved in Plymouth State. I can't remember if he's like the dean or he's on the board of directors. I'd have to go back and look. But she has this incredible map, grazingthesurface.com. And you go on to this map, and there's a name in all these different places, and there's a number by each one of the names. And when you click on that number,
it shows you the ties.
It shows you all the ties, the links, the information, articles, and the articles all about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you wonder how many people heard that Ghislaine Maxwell was found here in New Hampshire, arrested here in New Hampshire. And then we have, guess what? Her twin sisters are tied to the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, WEF.
John's former Senator John Sununu is the economic chair,
whatever, and the
he's
WEF,
the higher up
under Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, and you want to know where we're going, and then so go down to Salem. Have you been to Salem lately?
I haven't been to Salem lately. Well, about a month ago.
David and I were driving through Salem, and we see this is happening around various places. It happened in Bedford, where all of a sudden this big apartment building goes up. It's happening in Merrimack. It's happening in Salem. It's happening in all of these different places. And it's, but the one in Salem is really eye-opening because maybe because of the $27 million that was the problem that we were concerned with, the federal money coming in for the vaccines.
Correct.
And it said in part 3 of that contract that you would be willing to have assist the federal Health and Human Services Commissioner if they ordered that you segregate people who didn't have vaccine or it's something along that.
So building those filled the bill?
If you build those, well, I just, my imagination went crazy. And I'm sitting there looking at these buildings. They're very, very stark. They're dark gray. And there's like 4 of them in an area. And all of a sudden I thought it'd be so simple to put up a barbed wire fence around that compound, and all of a sudden those people all become incarcerated. Would that happen? Would we really let something like that happen? Well, if you examine or start looking into the World Economic Forum and some of the things that they're proposing and the control mechanisms that they're putting out there and the fear that they're installing in people, and you kind of go,
it's possible.
Something is possible.
Yeah.
And, they keep saying conspiracy theorist. Well, it's no longer a theory, because if you go back to some of all things, The Simpsons.
Yes. They talk about a pandemic. They talk about aliens. They talk about school education. Everything that's happening now, you can find on The Simpsons. Oh, yeah.
Or you look at the movie Matrix, or you look at some of the other sci-fi movies.
So, Secretary of State,
Oh, what was that
Oh,
one?
what was the other? The designated survivor,
Yes.
Scandals, which they got rid of. There's a number of series, West Wing to some degree, that was kind of low key. But these other ones that I named to you, you watch them, binge watch them, and they talk about exactly what's going on now, everything word for word. This is what you have to understand, that the cabal, the evil, the un-Americans, I don't even know what other descriptions, they tell you exactly what they're doing to your face, but they dare you to say anything back.
Well,
they dare you to question them, and that's how they've gotten away with it. Look at our school boards.
The other thing that happens is that if you really examine the language, the opposition to the traditional way of interpreting those language, the words and so forth, 1828 dictionary, right? We go back way, way, way back, and how it was defined, and today what it means. You know, for example, a little word like gay. You know,
Happy,
happy,
frivolous.
I have friends that were named gay because they were
Right,
joyous.
Gaylord, Gale, yeah.
And
Gail,
today,
Leigh.
Now it means something entirely different.
Correct.
Right? Abortion is another one. So if you were a pregnant woman and you lost your child through natural means in the first 3 months, it was called a miscarriage.
Correct.
Medically. And then if it was after 3 months, it was an abortion of the fetus, because that was the medical term for that. And I've had friends who had that happen to them, and they look at the medical records and they're appalled because they did not choose to terminate that pregnancy.
Correct.
But that's what abortion seems to mean today. And it's one of those things where we need to really look at what does the word really, really mean.
Correct. We need to hold people's feet to the fire and not use it and change it on a whim just because it suits their agenda, because that's what we're looking at, are agendas.
Look at critical thinking versus critical race theory.
Yeah.
And critical seems to be an okay word until you really examine what is it they're describing. So one of the questions that I've come to start to ask anybody is when we're having a discussion is, well, what do you mean by that particular word?
I think they need to be able to explain that.
Well, yeah, but at least you get on the same page.
Right. Well, I know, to digress just a little bit, but down in Massachusetts, we have Donnie Palmer, who is running against Ayanna Presley. And as a father, as a patriot, as a black gentleman, as a teacher, as a boxer, and a special education, he has questioned and said, what are you doing? And people that are standing out there screaming and yelling at him and Sean and all the people that simply want to have a discussion, they can't even explain what that terminology is, and he questioned them as somebody that is being pointed to, and he questions them and they can't answer. Well, then you're this, and they start calling him names, or it's insane.
It's like Rayla.
Yes.
I got so funny that Rayla is a white supremacist. And she's got the most beautiful bronze skin in the world.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to Donnie. Yeah.
And you have to say, do you even know what white
colorblind?
means? Are you colorblind?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, are you colorblind? I mean, that's what we're all supposed to be, is colorblind. It's all about the people.
Right.
It's all about...
Well, that was what Martin Luther King said, you know? The not the color of my skin, but the value of my character, right? That's what we're really supposed to be looking at. That's what we really want to have. And that's what we want in our elected officials as well. So,
correct. We also want that in our school boards.
Right.
And those are failing abysmally. We've got legislators, not all, but legislators that do not serve the people that elected them. They believe that they're now in this power. I mean, they open up the session and they have 12 to 1,500 bills. They didn't come from you. They didn't come from me. I don't know where they came from. They came from special interests and lobbyists, and And they've forgotten that it's supposed to be about we the people, what we want. And
right, and the very first thing that the legislature in New Hampshire is supposed to do is hear the remonstrances and the grievances of the people. That's the very first, that's why they're called the general court, because they were supposed to be hearing from the people about what their concerns were. And then if it required some legislation, then they would come
take care of it at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
But as you say, a lot of it is they've heard from one person, and so they create something, or
the lobbyists and special interests said this is what they want. You know, those little peons, people that don't know anything. They don't know any better. Do it for them. That's what we're looking at, decades and decades. We're looking at school boards that get elected. They promise this, this, and this, and meanwhile they've got their hands in your pocket, going, you know, you have no skin in the game. Oh, yes, I do. It's called property taxes, baby. Yeah. And we're not building a new school. Boston Catholic was that? No, I'm calling it the wrong school. Boston Latin.
Oh, the Boston Latin School.
Boston Latin School. We've got this school up in Manchester that has been the building has been there for 100 years.
Trinity's been there forever, and
the education is top notch.
Right. So one of the things that we also have to remember is that first of all, we have to be willing to stand up and participate. What is it that you were gifted for? God created you for a purpose. What is your purpose? What are you supposed to be doing? How are you supposed to be living it out? All right?
Correct.
And if you are someone who is serving, then you need to be serving. But if you're one of the ones who have elected someone, you can't just sit there and say, well, I did this, I voted for you. Remember, there's those three fingers pointing back at you,
yourself.
And that you have to be participating too.
Hold their feet to the fire. You need to know how they're voting. You need to email. If you can write, I can't write. If somebody writes something, I can fix it and punch it up, but I can't write from scratch. That's not my lane. But that's your lane. You need to be emailing. If you're really good at calling people and saying, why'd you vote that way? This is not acceptable. And everybody needs to call. Everybody needs to email. Everybody needs to send a letter. This is how you participate.
Right. Or you can even go out and door knock for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean.
Flag? Even a flag?
Right. Flag waving. So one of the things that Take Back New Hampshire that was started up in Campton by Mark Allegro. And Mark's just got a big hit piece. It's kind of funny. He's so excited. He says, "I thought I was insignificant. Now they sent out that hit piece on me. So now I'm not insignificant."
You're on their radar, Mark.
But at any rate, Take Back New Hampshire is an organization that he started up there. And one of the things that they decided to do to have an impact was they divided up into three groups. One group went out and did door knocking. One group got on the phone and started making phone calls. Another group got out and was going to the churches and trying to get more people involved in voting. Well, and the whole thing is that they're not just sitting there. They're going out and they're participating. And one of the questions they always ask is, we're not here to try and to influence where you're standing on this. We want to know what interests you. Why are you concerned? What's impacting your life today?
And what are you willing to do? Yeah.
And you get the conversation going, and then you can find out, are you willing to do something else? Would you be willing to come over and join us and
solutions?
Yeah,
actual
we're looking for
solutions.
Right.
And everybody comes together. So here's the thing: they all say, this is the word, unite, unite, unite. Well, it doesn't mean unite, and everybody says the same word and the same phrase in the same way. I was just going to say that. That unite means everybody comes together, that we want to take back New Hampshire, take back America, whatever that is that you all decide. And everybody comes at it from different angles. You come at it from an education. You come from it from a legislative point of view. You come from it from business, from medical, from energy, from whatever. That's how you unite, not one person or 100 people with one word and one thought. And no. That's brainwashing. We all come together under one common cause, standing shoulder to shoulder, not behind anybody else, because then, you're pushing that person out to get the arrows. You stand shoulder to shoulder, and everybody brings your gift to the table.
Right. And it reminds me of Nehemiah when he was rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem, right? And there's always going to be somebody that's, you can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that, right? But if each of the families built their section of the wall, then eventually the wall is built.
Correct.
And the same thing in America, in New Hampshire. If we really want our liberties and our freedoms back, if everybody takes their gift, their piece of the puzzle, and works on that, and fits it all together, then we
are united.
And we are united. We're not divided. Divided we fall.
Correct.
United we stand.
I love it. United as Americans, as New Hampshire citizens, as voters, as taxpayers, as moms and dads, as families, God-fearing people. Get our morals and values and respect back. That's the cause.
Well, and read your Constitution so you know what your rights are.
Correct. Because if you don't know them, you don't have
It's
any.
amazing how many times you go out and talk to other people in other states and you ask them, have you read your Constitution yet? Oh, yeah, I read my U.S. Constitution.
No, your state Constitution.
My state Constitution?
Yes, the sovereign state. This is what we have to learn.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure as always. I think we need to get back to this kind of regular chit-chatting and talking about the issues and solutions and what are facing people, and not from, Washington, D.C. or some pie-in-the-sky place.
Yeah, I'm excited about Don Bolduc. I really am.
Yes.
And Carolyn Levitt and Bob Burns, and the possibility that we will have people who are willing to serve us, not just go down and wear their white suits and ignore us. But I'm excited about that at the federal level. But really, where we can have the most impact is at the local level.
I love
So
it.
we have to take care of our next door neighbors. We have to get out and start talking to one another again and finding out what, in your neighborhood, for example, what qualities are around? Is there somebody that's a nurse? Is there somebody that's a teacher? Is there somebody that builds? Is there somebody that is a plumber? Somebody else that's an electrician? What are the gifts that are in your local community, just in the 2 or 3 blocks around you?
And make sure you know who those people are.
Make sure you know who they are. And if there's a senior citizen there, make sure you're checking up on them, especially this coming winter.
I love it. On that note, thank you, Miss Karen, and thank you, everybody, for joining us, Chit-Chatting with Jocelyn. I'll see you next week.